Take a look at this flower. It's beautiful, right? With these delicate petals that can paint a whole field in the most stunning colors. But this is the opium poppy, and it has a really complicated and, frankly, a deadly history. It holds the power to heal, but also the power to destroy. So how did this one flower come to define the fate of an entire nation? And that's the wild thing about the poppy. It's this central paradox. From it, we get these life-saving medicines like morphine and codeine, drugs that literally ease suffering for millions of people. But from that exact same plant, we get heroin, a truly devastating narcotic that's responsible for 1 in 5 drug-related deaths in America alone. So you've got one plant with two profoundly different fates. You know, for most of history, if you were talking about opium, you were probably talking about China or maybe Turkey. In the global story of this incredibly powerful plant, Afghanistan was, well, it was a minor character, barely even a footnote. Its production was almost nothing. To put a number on that, back in 1932, Afghanistan officially reported producing just 75 tons of opium. It's a tiny amount, practically invisible on the world stage. Just remember that number, 75 tons. Okay, now let's fast forward to 2017. That number, it's skyrocketed to 9,000 tons. That's not just growth, it's a full-blown explosion. And the result of that explosion? By the 21st century, Afghanistan wasn't just a producer of opium. It was the producer. It was responsible for an astonishing 85% of the entire world's supply. So the big question is, how on earth did that happen? How did a nation go from a tiny footnote to the absolute global epicenter of opium? Well, the story really begins with geography. You could say Afghanistan's location has been both a blessing and a total curse. It's positioned right at the crossroads of major empires, and that strategic importance has made it a constant target for conquest, and, you guessed it, a hotbed of instability. For centuries, it's just been this parade of empires marching through Afghanistan. We're talking Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, the British Empire playing its great game against Russia, and then, of course, the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Every single invasion left scars, creating this cycle of conflict that just never allowed any lasting stability to take root. And this long history of conflict brings us to a really critical turning point, the 1979 Soviet-Afghan War. This decade-long war didn't just destabilize the country, it completely shattered it. And in doing so, it created the perfect, tragic conditions for the opium economy to just explode. I mean, the scale of the devastation was just immense. Over a tenth of the population died. 40%, almost half, became refugees. And crucially, 70% of the country's agricultural land was lost. The war didn't just bring violence, it completely destroyed the very foundation of Afghanistan's traditional economy, which was farming. So, in the ashes of all that destruction, a whole new economy emerged. For the Mujahideen resistance fighters, the poppy became their currency. Think about it. It's a crop that grows easily in that harsh terrain, it's simple to transport, and it has immense value. The trade was simple and brutal. Opium for weapons. This created this powerful incentive to not just grow poppies, but to grow as many as you possibly could. And the results were immediate. Production just jumped from less than 75 tons before the war to 1,200 tons by the time the Soviets left. The annual growth rate hit 14%. All of a sudden, Afghanistan was responsible for over a third of the world's heroin supply. The narco-state was being born. But here's the thing. The Soviet withdrawal didn't end the violence, and it certainly didn't end the opium trade. Instead, it just became even more deeply entrenched. The whole infrastructure of war and drugs was now in place, and it created this cycle that would prove almost impossible to break. And that cycle looks something like this. First, opium funded the Mujahideen against the Soviets. Then, during the brutal civil war that came next, it funded all the different warlords fighting each other. When the Taliban took over, they taxed it. And after the U.S. intervention, guess what? The opium profits flowed right back to fund the new Taliban insurgency. Every single conflict was fueled by the poppy. For decades, the world really focused on the geopolitics of Afghanistan's opium problem. But while all those drugs were flowing out, an even greater tragedy was unfolding inside the country's own borders. The poison they were exporting began to consume them from the inside out. The numbers from the UN are just staggering. In 2005, there were 500,000 addicts in Afghanistan. By 2010, that number had doubled to 1 million. And by 2015, it had doubled again to 2 million people. And here is the most heartbreaking statistic of all. 1 in 3 of those addicts are children under the age of 15. With opium becoming cheaper than food, desperate parents started giving it to their kids just to suppress the pangs of hunger. An entire generation has been born into this cycle of poverty, war, and addiction. Which leaves us with this final haunting question. After more than 40 years, the fates of this nation and this flower are just completely intertwined. The poppy has financed wars, it's propped up governments, and it's destroyed millions of lives. Can a country so defined by this one single plant ever truly break free?